Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Brown goes to the left hand. Bruce, 3 on the clock. Jokic deep 3. Good! Wow! 21-point lead for Denver, their big lead of the night. Back to Jokic. Jokic back to KC, the 3. Good! Inside out. Denver leads it by 14. 121 to 107.
Pitch. Swinging a fly ball, well hit. Right center. There's the big swing. It's gone. 3-run homer, and it's 4-0.
0-1. Swinging a high drive, center field. It is deep. Kiermaier looking back, looking up. It is gone. A home run off the batter's eye. Aaron Judge has gone yard. In the 5th inning, swinging a high fly ball, deep left center field. Fletcher is back. He's at the wall. It's a grand slam for Ryan Noda. It's the A's first of 2023, and he has tied the game at 8.
It's exciting, and I've always said from the beginning, Georgia, outside of Nebraska, Georgia's as family as it gets, just with our history there. You know, not just Stafford. It's more than that. It's the relationships I created with those guys that went to school there that weren't even athletes. Being in the wedding, Sean Chappis being in front office at Georgia. Every time we went there, it felt like family, and it's elite.
Elite.
Did he say Bean in the wedding?
Kobe Bean Mosman, Oklahoma Taylor's kiddo. Different Bean. Kobe Bean Bryant.
I thought he said
different
Bean in the wedding. Did he say that?
No.
What did he say there?
I don't know.
Shane, help me out. I don't know why that stuck out to me.
Outside of Nebraska, Georgia's as family as it gets, just with our history there. Not just Stafford. It's more than that. It's the relationships I created with those guys that went to school there that weren't even athletes. Being in the wedding, Sean.
Is that what he said?
Yes.
Oh,
can I?
Yeah, call your 30.
I don't even want the full. I just want a 30.
Yeah.
I thought we had an agreement, or maybe you just put that on me. I wasn't supposed to defer to Shane anymore.
That's a good point. Sorry.
No, I'll do whatever, right?
Come on, Shane.
If it's cool to defer to him, I will. But if you don't want me to, I won't. But you just like skipped. Well, you didn't skip over me because you asked me and I didn't know. So you went to Shane. But
right.
Are we? Is that cool again?
No, we're back. We're back here. I got to put the wall back up. We can't break that wall.
Shane. No more defer. I mean, I'm going to do it on habit, so I may get my wrist slapped. But as we know, in the last 24 hours, that will not be the first or the last time.
Right. It's your own question.
Well, he was talking to Eric. He wasn't talking to me. Giannis is back at the house chilling.
There's no failure in sports.
He probably watched last night's Lakers-Denver game.
So, you know what? First of all, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
H&H Chevrolet Studios.
Sorry, I got wrapped up on a wedding.
We just, he said, did he say bean? I was like, the beanery? Yeah, they do good work. What are we talking about?
Weren't even athletes.
You stuck on one word because you just took that one word.
Because I didn't know what we were talking about.
So we're in agreement.
Okay, stop it.
Being in the wedding.
So do you know why I know that? This is full disclosure. I'm going to give you a little bit of I always tell you when I'm
that because that happened to you before where you said the word
that
and
is
somebody said,
that is
hey,
one
that's
that
not
is
a word.
1000% accurate. So it was just like year 1 maybe. And my former boss, who is not in CN, Andy Ruback, he kind of used to mess with me. Like he was one of those guys that like kind of got in early, right? Like he didn't wait to break the ice. He just was kind of like all in on wanting to be friends. And at first I thought that was a little weird, but and I got mad at him a couple times, but over time, like his confidence kind of wore me down, right? So I was like, oh man, I kind of like this guy, right? So he said he was just joking with me one day and he dropped agreeance. He goes, we have to stop using that word. And a couple of people, I think on Twitter, now this was early in the social media days, because I had only been on Twitter since 11.
Okay.
So this was like in 12, and I was barely using Twitter. Like I was just not about that Twitter life, right? And it was something wordsmith on Twitter, kept asking me why I was using that word. So then I was told that you don't use that in oral language. You can sometimes people write it, but it hasn't been used in hundreds of years. So when you Googled it yesterday and you're like, it's a word. And I go, no. You can't just say if it's a word.
If it's on the internet, it's
true. That's what your response was to me. And I was like, no, you got to go deeper. So then when you were reading it to me, it was saying on the internet. And how they know this, I don't know, because I don't know what people were doing on the internet in the
1800s, but it said that's what they used.
Yeah. So there were two words that I would always kind of debate: agreeance and irregardless. Because
I've never ever heard somebody use irregardless. So the fact that that's like in your
do you know why
for
though?
Example,
there's always a reason.
Sure, hit me with it.
Coach Osborne used it all the time. All the time.
Well, he was a winner, so he can say what he wants.
And his lexicon was especially like when you're like 17 or 18 and you listen to him talk, you're like, oh man, where did he get that word from? You know what I mean? It was like
he just makes up words, but hey, he wins championships too, so we'll go with it.
So then one time he told me about written versus oral. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. Persons and people.
So you can what you settled on was you can write agreeance, but you can't say agreeance.
Correct.
Why is that? Because what if I'm writing a paper, but then I have to present it?
Because I worked with somebody who is like the diction word police. And that's Michael Severe.
Right.
And he would chastise me constantly about those two words. And sometimes we could be talking about, Marcus Dupree at Oklahoma back in the day, and he would find a way to weave in irregardless for no reason and look at me and wait for me to say so. So they shame me. So there's one more word. I used to always say, Shane, what was my term that Big Head Jed got on me for? I would say, I digress.
I don't know.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
So I would say I digress because I would get off on something, and I said, but I digress.
You come back,
and he would always tweet at me, and he would say, something. I digress, and I just stopped using it completely. I mean, I'm.
Can you not say that?
I think I was probably saying it too much.
Oh, okay.
And
so it was a repeater for you.
Yeah, and Random Mike got on me one time about saying right. Like you'd say something, I go, right?
I say no question a lot.
And he's like, he called and he's like, DB, I love you. Like we're kindred spirits. We like women's sports and we cheer for this and that. He goes, but you got to stop saying right. I was like,
you're dang right.
It's cool. Like, sometimes you're on the radio and you feel like people kind of know you. So if they want to slap your wrists, I listen to Crazy Tim in Colorado and I've really only met him like once.
And you guys exchange Bath and Body Works.
Timmy's a pro. He's great to work with.
No, he's hilarious. So we apparently have a mutual acquaintance, and he was going to give me a lot of background knowledge on this whole Gretna phenomenon. And I got to call him. I don't even know if he left me his number because I'm super interested in this because I've seen what's happened to schools that split. I saw it with Elkhorn. I saw it with Papio. My dad used to talk about it with in Bellevue because he was really good friends with the James. And so I'm always curious what happens when schools split and you lose a soup and stuff like that. And you hear about the school board meeting. So I want to know, right? Like, how political was it? And so he goes, hey, I'm also friends with Tim. But that could be a bad thing. I just kind of laughed on Twitter. I was like, nah, that's a good thing, man. I like Tim. I miss Tim, Shane. We need to put out the bat signal for Tim. He's probably driving around in a field somewhere. He's the one that basically schooled me on grass and fertilization and aerating.
Does his yard look like center field?
No, but he
Man, that dirt looks amazing.
He sells. Hey, man, his article the other day, man, I said, Sip, you gotta stop.
Don't mealy mouth me.
People think he is obsessed with Deion.
Sip?
Yeah. But anyway, he sells chemicals to farmers.
Okay.
So he knows about stuff, right?
He knows the ins and outs of
yeah. So he
making something look nice.
I made the dumb mistake one time of asking if I could put a thermometer in the ground, because the same questions you asked me about when to seed, when not to seed. Somebody called and told me about temps. I said, around the world, you know the temps of the soil. Like, who's doing that, right? Like, how do I know my soil's 68 degrees? I said, well, can I just stick
There's a contraption.
Yeah, and I have a meat thermometer. I was like, can I?
Did you really put that in the ground?
I wanted to. I sought permission. I should have just done it on the sneak and not told anybody. But of course, I asked. I was like, can I just put my meat thermometer in the dirt? And people called and they're like, you're an idiot. Don't do that. So, listen.
Hey, I ask questions too.
Yeah,
so that's why I laugh.
And sometimes
I laugh because I know I sound stupid a lot.
Sometimes we're just not going to sound very smart, and it's okay.
But sometimes,
I mean, I don't know.
You may discover something.
In the words of who? Nightbird.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, that is what you're leaning on this week.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But is it okay that he was in the wedding? Like, we really skipped over that.
I have no idea. Like
if Matt Rule would have gotten remarried when he got here, just renewed the vows.
Yeah.
And he said, Dylan, why don't you come be the best man? Would that have worked?
No, I thought he was going to ask me first. Somebody on Twitter.
No, you're going to be the guy that you got your certificate online.
Stop.
You're going to be
anyway. Stop.
You're going to be the guy that actually does the ceremony.
So somebody got on Coach.
Who's the word? What's the word for that?
I don't know.
Does it start with an O?
The official.
Yes.
You're going
to officiate the wedding or the vow renewal.
Hey, so somebody yesterday kind of pieced together a lot of things from probably Friday's segment with Sauter, or maybe Monday when we were talking about Rezac, because I said it seemed like Nebraska was apologetic with Teddy, right? But it wasn't Coach Rule. It was Cooper. It was Evan talking to Teddy. Right. And somebody on Twitter yesterday goes, hey, Coach Rule, you not only need to apologize you don't just need to apologize to DB, man. You need to apologize to all of us. And I was like, and he tagged Coach Rule. And I was like, yeah, Coach Rule's probably going to read this and be like, apologize to him for what?
And then he's going to go watch Betting Bites and be like, what did he say this time?
But it's just funny, right? Like, people's listening and hearing skills. It's
what?
Exactly. But I know your mannerisms now. Like, I know when you check out.
It is funny because after the show, sometimes if I'm typing an email or doing something on my computer and you and Shane are trying to have a Bermuda Triangle conversation, you definitely know who's listening and who's not.
My favorite thing, and I'm glad you can take it, is I'll say something, you won't acknowledge me, and I'll say, okay, I'll ask another time. And you'll go, what?
Yeah, because I hear that. Because I'm like, wait a second.
Or I'll say, okay, I won't bother you. Or, okay, never mind. Or you can get back to me on that one. So I'll keep it put. But I'm used to not being listened to. So.
And then instead of re-explaining yourself, you then go into, see, that's why I know you're not listening to me. And then here it comes.
What? Shane.
There he goes.
In honor of your ping hat today, we're going to talk golf. We get one of our favorites, Brad Klein.
At the very end.
Listen, he is so funny and so snarky. He gives zero cares. And I know it doesn't sound as cool when I say zero cares, but I don't obviously use cuss words.
Right there.
Like the one scout that said, screw that to the NBA draft lotto and saying they already got Dave and Tim, they don't need another all-star center. And then all of a sudden you hear Peter J. Holt, yes, yeah,
dude,
banging the table, getting up there.
Greg Popovich memes last night on Twitter. I was in tears.
Team comment page.
Yeah, comments are important. But I got to ask you something. So as I'm watching my team get dissected with fine cutlery by the Joker, right?
Which was funny because I thought that, and then I'd type a few notes, look up, and then, it's a 4-point game. It's a type of, it's, Denver's back up 16. Like, that's how it was trending.
So when because this is a lot of time, like the country, the nation, the national folks will watch. Maybe, because he's constantly blacked out here, which is weird for the Nuggets because I'm not driving 8 hours to go watch the Nuggets play.
Right.
But Denver's blacked out a ton. And so unless
the Avalanche are blacked out.
Unless you have the NBA, unless you have other means to watch, you don't really watch Jokic all the time. Were you at any point last night, were you watching him and you're wondering, God, he's killing these guys. Doesn't appear to be exerting a whole lot of energy. Why do we hate on his game? Did you not want? Did you not
rebounding?
Did you not want to hit Kendrick Perkins up and be like, what is it that you don't like about? Like, what makes him a stat sheet patter? Like, he's killing these guys.
And as you said, it's like he's moving at 60%.
So remember the other day when I go, he is 7 foot. And I go, yeah, but I said relative to the guys he's playing against, his athleticism is minute. It's minuscule. Doesn't jump, doesn't run, doesn't cut. He's as efficient a player at this level as I've seen in years. When you just talk about utter efficiency.
Putting the ball in the bucket. And not taking
or allowing somebody else to put the ball in the bucket because of what he does. And he's so unassuming. And sometimes his expressions probably drive you crazy. You're like, what is he mad about? I'm like, man, he grew up in Serbia. He was kind of a chunky kid. He's probably mad at the world, right? Like, what part of his game? Why wouldn't you like Jokic? He's ridiculous.
I don't have a reason why you wouldn't. Nope.
You watch the little dribble, the pin down with the ball screen, and they come off the little curl motion. How are you supposed to stop that? Like they do it every other time down the court. Somebody's going to get an open look.
34, 21, 14.
Without breaking a sweat. Without breaking a sweat.
Meanwhile, AD had a phenomenal game, too.
He's got his hands full.
That's a guy that can make his free throws.
Hey, who did I tell you was going to go off as the former Laker that I was dreading? There's only one.
Was it Pope?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get there.
Dude, how about his smooth mid-range game? It's like, it just is going to be, they scored a franchise record after 3 quarters. They had 106 points.
Right.
But
does Caldwell Pope strike you as somebody that is like 6'5"?
No.
I mean, and you watch.
He looks longer.
Right. But when you watch the NBA, sometimes you think a guy is smaller than he actually is. Or
he looks longer.
Yeah.
Because he has those long arms. But, I found myself captivated by the discussion of, when they asked LeBron at the presser a couple of days ago about playing with house money, which I hate, which most competitors hate. Right? Dude's like, what do you mean? I mean, I know what house money is, but what do you mean? KD whispered something in his ear, like, nah. LeBron was like, yeah, like AD likes to say, nah. Like, I'm trying to win every hand. Do people not know that professionals don't like that term? If you have any sort of pride, and you're LeBron James,
you have some buffer room. What do you think?
Now, even I can acknowledge that I didn't expect the Lakers
losing.
I didn't expect the Lakers to be in the conference finals when the season started.
Nobody did.
So is this gravy for me? No, it should be. But we always talk about it. Can you adjust your expectations on the fly?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can.
Absolutely can.
Of course you can. Because I just don't think you should say that would be like, you have your son or daughter, whatever his name's going to be, like Jesse.
It'll be John.
John. You're like, John, man, you've been a C student up until the 4th grade. Now you're making A's. Hey, it's okay if you go back to making C's. No, right?
Yeah,
Once they show you that they're capable of getting A's, you want them to get A's, right? There's no house money.
Things are going to be difficult, and there's going to be some band-aids you have to throw over the open wound because you got your arm scraped. It's a C now. You got another C, but guess what? You remember when you got that A? I know you can get the A again.
Yeah, it's like No, there is no house
Playing with
money.
house money. As a professional.
To LeBron.
As a professional.
How many finals has he played in? 10?
Hold on. That's one. That's 2 hands worth.
I think 10.
But he's playing with house money.
Like, why would you ask him that?
I don't understand why certain questions get asked sometimes. Now, sometimes I can side with the press.
Who are you, Eric? You asked
me the same question last year, Eric.
Eric.
Dude, he's got a dialect, man. Leave my man alone. Eric.
You asked me the same question last year, Eric.
I would like to hear him say Glagowski. Maybe
Like the big Lebowski?
Like game-winning goals last night in state soccer. He probably would just call him
Lewandowski.
He probably would just call him.
Man,
Glow.
state soccer last night was thrilling.
Is that a word you'd use?
Thrilling?
This is Thriller. Oh, that's right. Can't play music.
Hold on. You can sing it though.
Are we, Shane? Am I on? I tried not to get on camera this morning, but Sasha always gets mad.
Is it close to midnight? Nope.
It's after midnight. Did you have cable yet? You weren't even born. Never mind. We kind of sat around my mom's house in the what?
Did you have cable yet? You weren't even born. Thanks.
My bad. We watched the Thriller video. I think it was like at 5 o'clock on a weekend on MTV, the little movie mini.
1982 is when that song was released.
Yeah, watched it downstairs. There were some old brown bean bags. Thought they were the Cat's Meow. Literally did not realize how cheap they were because when you plopped in it, eventually the fluffing came out. But it's weird, the weird things you remember as a kid.
The best thing about that song?
What?
Produced by Quincy Jones. That guy's legendary.
Yeah, what do you know about Quincy?
Yeah, I know producers.
Quincy has a daughter I'm a big fan of as an actress. Rashida. The Office.
Is that Pam?
No, it was Pam's war lover. What was Pam's counterpart's name on The Office? She went to the other office.
I don't know. Yes, I know who you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like her. She's a good actress. And she made seemingly having bags under your eyes, non-faux pas. So I kind of was a fan.
Does that mean look okay, non-faux
yeah,
pas?
she made it. Oh, she made it okay to have raccoon eyes, or whatever people call it when you guys can. And
honestly,
it doesn't. You have your glasses on.
I can see it.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like my analogies?
I like when you help put the puzzle together for me.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not very smart.
People at the grocery store make fun of me.
Why? Because you're looking in the section and you're pulling boxes back.
Because I use analogies. One of the guys I was checking out at a local grocery store.
You were checking out
at the self checkout because I now know how to type in SKU numbers. So free DB. And he said my name out loud. He wanted me to look, but I didn't. And he got close to me and he looked in the front of me. So just imagine how awkward that is. It's a stranger, right? And he goes, I know I've seen you somewhere before. Are you been in? Have I been in where? No, I'm just kidding. But
oh, good dad joke.
Oh, so we ended up talking about the Lakers, but it's neither here nor there.
Hey, we'll touch a little bit on state soccer. We'll touch on some new things regarding Dylan Raiola.
Are you
next?
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
1 year later, you'd be standing here just. You've ever imagined that 1 year later, you'd be standing here just days away from your PGA Championship debut?
I could definitely imagine it, but I didn't think it would actually happen.
You've ever imagined that 1 year later, you'd be standing here just days away from your PGA Championship debut?
I could definitely imagine it, but I didn't think it would actually happen.
I'm confident. I feel good. It's been a great year. It's been an amazing year, and I'm just hoping to keep adding more to it. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully I can keep riding that wave.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And Caldwell Pope comes out of the pack. Here comes Murray. Alley-oop to Gordon. Oh, what a play.
Hey, welcome back to the show, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Watching that play happen, I thought they were going to be too late to the alley-oop.
Did you?
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of pressure on the back end. Gordon only had about a half a step, but boy, was I wrong.
Why are you reacting the pain and misery of watching my team get the Ginsu cutlery pulled out on them? No, did your parents buy Ginsu? You probably bought Hankels or
I don't even know what that is.
It's
Hankels?
just brand of knives. Ginsu cutlery used to be on like the infomercials when I was growing up. So if you wanted like real sharpening tools, you'd be like, so
is Pampered Chef a new thing or is that an old thing?
It's an old thing.
So they had a few of those knives.
Hankels?
I remember.
Or does Pampered Chef
Pampered
have their
Chef.
own?
But
so
she
they have
also
Pampered Chef
she got a lot of
knives?
hand-me-downs. So
who's she?
My mom. We were talking about my parents. You asked if my parents got these.
Yeah, but it's like I remember I almost choked one of my kids for saying that. Micah was talking to Maya, and he kept saying he. And he was talking about me, and I'm in the room. I'm like, hey, man, who's
Well, my mom's not here.
Who is he? So we're back on the mom thing.
Well, so she had knives with wooden handles. Still has them.
I took a few when I first moved from my mom, and they actually split.
So what brand is that? Or is
can't remember the brand, but
we had those growing
Pampered
up.
Chef, aren't there knives in colors?
Now they are.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
But there are some that are just black handle, silver blade.
Yeah, my buddy, Degenerate Aaron, got me it's like a machete knife. Well, actually, he let me use it. And his brother found it on like eBay for dirt cheap. And I kind of got spoiled because this was probably 7-8 years ago. So now I need all my knives sharp. So I've gone through about 8 sharpeners. So I need to find one that lasts.
Do you have to replace sharpeners?
Yeah, they go bad. They go bad.
I sharpen my knives every now and then because
Do you use like the circular thing and go?
No, so mine is where I also store the knife.
You can put your handle in it and just go like.
Well,
this.
yeah, you just like go back and forth,
like a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Is that how you dance on the dance floor?
Let me. Yeah, no, I do the worm.
The sprinkler.
I do the shopping cart, right?
Yeah.
No,
Avery's probably like, is this what these yahoos do?
Know, right. Well, side note before we get to her, I was doing the lawnmower a lot 2 days ago when I left my grass growing too long because I had to stop.
Yeah, I made grass
and mulch and
I made grass
restart.
shame you.
Please do.
I probably would.
Please do. There's spots that it was so long, DB, that the spots in the grass were missed. Like there's still tall grass. So I'm going to have to mow again probably on Friday just to get the spots that I missed. But it's because the grass was so long. I'll tell you where the grass wasn't long. Morrison. Let's bring in Avery. Now, Avery, good morning.
This is our Avery. Avery, are you
Good morning.
Avery, are you making is this your debut on the show?
Yeah,
Ooh, I think it is.
Well, welcome. First Timers Club. We'll have to get you a certificate.
Should we do that?
We should.
We got to get mailing addresses.
Well, we should do live guests with that. So like every time Sauter comes in, he just gets like a pin. He'll look like a captain or a general in the army eventually.
All right, Avery with the cool first name spelling. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I am good. I got baseball here soon. The next state thing's happening. I'm excited. I've really enjoyed the state stuff here in Nebraska so far. So
let's go back to last night. Class A, Creighton Prep gets the W. Pretty cool moment for you because you could share that moment with Ed Gordon, assistant coach over there, and you guys both played soccer at UNO. You also texted me last night and you said, gosh, state soccer gets me emotional. And for you not even playing, what does that look like?
You barely have a pulse. Like, what does I'm curious because you play it pretty cool.
I was emotional because last time I won a state title was my freshman year in high school, and that feels like forever ago. But the experience that they do here in Nebraska just beats anything I've ever experienced before. So just seeing the amount of community that's been this invested in coming to watch these kids play high school, when I know high school is valued here a lot right now, but there's a changing climate in high school sports where, there's clubs that are trying to take kids away from the high school experience. And the competitive stuff has really got more involved. And I think to watch the community really value high school. Yes, is it always your top quality? No. However, look what it does for the kids and look at what it does for the camaraderie of the school. So that's what makes me emotional, because I remember those times where the best of my high school career was those last 4 months of the school year. But watching these kids compete and do it for one another, because the season is literally 2 months long. It's so quick, and a lot of these kids aren't going on to the next thing. So this is their moment. This is their thing. And to have 6,000 people there watching them for one last moment, that's what gets me. And for Ed Gordon, I was super happy for him because this is his first year on the coaching staff. So obviously an immediate impact, but the amount of hugs that the players gave him right after the win was very telling as to his connection he's had with these kids. And obviously what this school means to him and why he decided to come back.
And what I'm seeing kind of now, Avery, and I'll be curious to see how, as you evolve since you're now up to knee deep in high school sports, a lot of high schools now, we've seen it with volleyball, we've seen it with soccer. High schools are now willing to invest in higher club coaches, right? That's kind of been the way to combat who are you playing for or who are you playing with in the off season. Does that strike you as odd or progressive?
No, in a weird way, I know in Kansas, I don't know, I guess the logistics of it here, if you have to be on the staff of school somewhere, does head coach have to be
You do not have to be in the building. It used to be frowned upon, but that has gotten extremely lax over the last couple of years.
Yeah. You see, in Kansas, you have to be a teacher or obviously have to have involvement at the school. So I think, however, I do think that's probably what's helping Nebraska high school sports, just because in Kansas, there's oftentimes tends to be a fall off during that high school period, and also, just injury or just lack of knowledge. And that's no knock to, the Kansas coaches, but I think seeing the level that Nebraska is doing it at right now, and having those club coaches, those players trust those coaches and they know they're going to have their best interests. I also think too, like when you look at the Gretna girls team, like those girls are so dominant because they also play club together. So when you have a club or we have a coach that has some sort of knowledge on what the club is doing, that allows them not to have to shift gears completely. Like, I'm going to play a style and a system here in club, and then I got to go down a few levels to try to make it make sense at the high school level. I can understand why it's being done here, and especially if they're trying to keep the quality of high school sports at the level they're doing it right now.
Hey, watching Gretna girls win again and again and again, and you not really. I don't know if you followed Gretna when you played here in town. You may have, you may not, but knowing the streak that they're on, how important was it to not only you, but just seeing the community continue to rally around that team and just see how good they are in this area? Because we talk a lot about, the potential split and what that could do for the program. But for you being able to watch that team, just, I guess, overall, how special was it watching that group play?
Oh, so amazing. Just because their final performance, they went down 1-0 and their response was immediate. And the word powerhouse or word dynasty that I've heard thrown around during the season, like that was on display in the final there. Just the way they play, like from a soccer mind, me watching a lot of little details, just the drive, even like the goals. I don't know if you saw some of the goals that night, but like phenomenal goals, like just top tier finishes, the drive from the girls. And at halftime, Coach Hutchinson was talking about, there's no greater motivation for this team right now because this is the last time they're going to play together, and they know that. And so I think when you hear that kind of, put the pit in your stomach a little bit, being like, oh man, that really gets you going if these are girls trying to go for a three-peat and, this is the last time they get, and they know that. Like going into a game knowing it's your last time, not because you're a senior, but because there's like a physical boundary that's splitting you. Watching them do that together, and afterwards, I talked to London Buffini, and I'd asked her about the goal and it being the team's 100th goal and like what it means for this team. And she was like this light beam of joy. And I hated to do it to her, but I had to ask. But asking the question about what this game meant because of the split,
I hated to do it.
I hated it because she was happy, but I knew what was coming. And her demeanor changed immediately. So she was like, we're obviously crushed about it, but that's why the split meant so much for us. So, yeah, they were phenomenal.
Man, Avery.
I know, right? Polished pro.
Right. Well done. I mean, just also, too, how special it is for the younger generations to watch that Gretna girls team must be super special. Like, I can't even imagine being a 10-year-old watching that team play.
Avery, glad we made you nervous on your first go around. Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah, we'll see you later at Tal.
All right, pro.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
In and out, Jokic, another rebound, and the putback. He's got 10 rebounds already.
From a guy who came here initially as a second-round pick and overweight to where he is now, from an endurance and stamina standpoint, he is flying up and down the floor.
Hey, welcome back. 888-638-4876 if you'd like to get involved in any point, at any point. That's the way to say that. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. DB, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Awesome. Unplanned, unannounced phone call from Avery Howard of Hurrdat Sports talking state soccer just a segment ago. If you missed it, go back, check out the podcast later on after the show. She was absolutely fantastic.
She's ridiculous. I'm listening. I mean,
and we're biased.
I'm not.
But I'm saying we're biased because she's on our team.
Okay, I'm biased because she is on our team. I'm not biased that she's on our team because she's on our team in that way, right? So it's like,
no, I get.
Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like just after the first answer, I'm like, and listen, I've done this a long time. Polished. I knew though, kind of after the first couple of hits from practice.
Mm-hmm.
When she was in Lincoln, and the terminology and the terms that she used and how she had been following along to build the sequential stories, I'm like, I think I text you or Sauter. I go, yeah, she's pretty good.
Yeah, you definitely texted me that.
I was like,
well, you know, because you know something's good when Nick Baugh comments on it.
Oh, Nick that's Baugh, right. He did.
Nick Baugh only comments on things that are really good.
He did. I go because I think on Twitter I said way good. And then he said, like, no.
He said, like, clapping hands or something.
How about the first response to today's question? I didn't even get to what I wanted to get to.
Man down.
Because she's like been around watching, right? Boys and girls soccer.
Oh, her response to the first question. That's what you were saying.
Yeah.
I'm
So
there.
it's like there's a lot of talent, especially tactically. Like people look pretty skilled.
Right.
And I get the whole well, who are you playing against kind of thing, right? Because that's kind of the knock. But soccer is one of those things, at least in the Midwest, is starting to really come around. I'm just getting
And if
frustrated.
you want to play at the best level, more times than not, especially in soccer, you don't play at high school. You play
I know,
select.
club, I know.
Same thing with hockey.
And
you don't
and
play with the high
I know.
school team.
Unless you're in
play
Minnesota.
Exactly. Right. You play with, a select group of guys.
We were up there. We've been up there the last 5 or 6 years in hoops in some variety, and they have ice on the high school campuses. So they're skating at school, right? Eden Prairie, Egan, they're skating at school.
Yeah, you're playing for that team.
Right? I mean, it's unbelievable. But anyway, I say all that to say, are you ever frustrated? You're a soccer guy. You watch national soccer, and it's just not better on the world level. And you think to yourself, okay, I get it, right? Other countries, you're committed to academies and camps, and you're barely going to school at 9 years old, right? They're like sacrificing academics
for sport.
Should people be able to do that at a certain age, like going to trade schools? They do it at IMG.
Why not?
Like, why can't?
Right.
Why? Because it's clear we have the best athletes.
Oh,
and I'm not here for. Listen, I'm not here for their tight ends or their defensive ends, and they need to be goalies. No, it's about commitment to the sport. There's plenty of people that are athletes that would just do soccer if they could just do soccer all the time, right? I'm looking at these guys play 7-on-7 in the off season like it's their livelihood. Trust me, they do it for soccer too.
Right?
They
absolutely would.
And people are like, when are these guys in school? I have no idea, but they sure do travel to go play some 7-on-7.
I also know a lot of
like
people
at volleyball, same thing.
I also know a lot of people that are homeschooled and
we have a homeschool association here in the state of Nebraska.
I didn't even know that.
Just like any other PTA.
My
group.
neighbors have 2 10-year-old boys. Well, 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, I think, only play baseball. Like that's the only thing that these kids play. They go out in the yard during. I don't know if they like have scheduled break times while they're at home being schooled, but they go out in the yard. They play baseball. On the weekends, they travel for baseball. Like they do baseball. So in a way, you can do that. You can stick to one sport when you are being homeschooled. But in your example, I think a lot about that. I think a lot about making the sport your life and how you're able to manage that.
Like, I just don't think we want to compete on the world level. And I think it's as simple as you have to be willing to commit to it.
Hand raised. Question for you. At what point, what age did you or do you realize that you have somebody that could play, like your kid could play pro? At what age?
He was probably 14.
So did you ever think, and football is a different example because it's high school football is completely different than soccer, than hockey, than that. But say, put Caleb into a hockey player's shoes in Omaha, probably not playing for a high school team, probably playing for, would you get him a tutor? Like a tutor to go on, whether it's online and do things with him while he gets schooled on the road? Because he's probably traveling a lot if he's playing hockey.
So this is weird, but you put me on the spot like Cam Newton.
It's more of a curiosity than anything.
Because I'm thinking on the fly. My gut reaction is to say no. But if you add up all the money that we've spent on club and travel, and you just said, I could have a trainer and split the difference with a tutor, I would have it because we always kind of just find a way.
So financially, you could find a way to do it.
We just kind of, whether it's, we go without quite a bit.
I feel like that's like, if Connor Bedard is like an example of anything, I feel like that's something that he had to go through, like living with maybe a different family, having a lot of online classes with an online tutor, because his job was playing hockey at the age of 12.
Yeah. So, and we kind of rolled the dice, right? Because it's not like we saved for college. So once we made the commitment, it was, okay, we're going to do the things that we can do to try to secure post-secondary money, regardless of level. So, and I think people do it all the time. Well, I can't afford to go to college, even though there's lots of ways to afford to be able to go to college. I think a lot of it comes down to, like, you invest. And so I think it's important. So it's a two-way street. I think parents and guardians have to understand, listen, at some point, you got to realize if you're dumping money, stop. They're not going to do it in college, so don't stress yourself out. Or if you're pot committed and they are pretty good, see it through. Because the last thing you want to do is be the guy that's rushing the passer and you realize, or you're playing against the run and it's run action and you stop halfway through. Either go get the sack or go get back in coverage. Retrace your steps. Don't be the guy that's like, I'll poop and do nothing. Either get after the QB or get your ass back in coverage. Right? Like, if you're halfway there, finish.
Right.
Don't just stop and be like, oh man. So, people always wonder when to do club and when to do this. And, there's no magic. Listen, people, at 9 or at 10.
There's no blueprint to it.
I just think my general rule of thumb, and I mean this wholeheartedly. It's sport dependent. It depends on what sport. But if you're going to go the club route, and it's an Olympic sport, or it's your only sport, make sure they have training available out of season, and it meets your expectation level in terms of quality. Not will your son or daughter be the best. Make sure that they can tactically work on their game. Because if you're committed to, listen, if I'm playing select baseball and I'm a AAA kid, let's apply my two criteria. If it's your only sport, make sure there's off-season training.
Right.
Or if it's an Olympic sport like volleyball or soccer or wrestling, make sure there's out-of-season training that justifies the cost. Don't be with those folks where you pay $1,500 for the season, another $600 for the off-season. Don't get into that money grab, right? If you can. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. Hockey dad says, with what I've spent, they better play in college.
Right.
Now,
well, he also told me that his kids are homeschooled.
Yeah.
And that they only play hockey.
And now I get it, right? They're good, and not everybody is going to be that gifted, but they work. Like, they work at it.
Right. And don't think that there isn't benefit either to playing a lot of sports, because there is.
Oh,
but
so I think I had my first disagreement with Coach, the guy you call my bestie, because he said interesting take on multi-sport. I think he misunderstood, but it was late, and I don't think he wanted to go back and forth. But
I want to hear more about this. But what I was going to finish is, don't think there's not benefit to knowing the ins and outs of multiple sports, because it can help you. Now, you still have to focus on the one at the same time. So if you want to swim in the summer,
it also depends on the level.
Right. And if you want to swim in the summer recreationally, just with like a swim team in town, do it. It's a great strength training tool as well. But in the same light, you're probably going to play 7-on-7 multiple times throughout the week too, or on a weekend.
Or AAU hoops.
Right. So there's benefit to it a lot. Brian Christopherson up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Brian Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
I never want to take for granted the position that Dylan was in and the opportunity that he had. And, you know, you get to go through this process. Who knows how many times, how many kids you get to do this with. But it's our second one that we get to do the recruiting process with. But this one was cool. It was awesome. I'm not glad it's over with I'm glad that he's happy. He made a decision that, I think we can all live with.
Top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We appreciate you, and we appreciate having you on the show wherever you catch us. 590 here in town, ESPN Radio. We are live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Plus, we will be on KFOR in Lincoln starting at 9 o'clock. So plenty of places to grab us. And if you miss any part of the show, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. I know you can go back and watch the whole thing again on YouTube. So go do that. And toss DB a follow at Damon Benning on Twitter. I'm at Andrew Rogers.
Or
CC.
don't.
Toss the show a follow, whether it's at Hail Varsity Radio or at Hurrdat Sports. So lots of ways to catch us, and you can always catch DB on Benning Bites after the show or before the show as well. So I'm just fine. I'm giving everybody.
There's a roll joke in there somewhere.
I'm giving everybody their outlet. Oh, you think something else is about to come?
You in a good mood or what? I'm good.
He said interesting. I wish I knew what that meant.
Let's bring in Brian Christopherson now, as we do every Wednesday, but I have just been told we won't be able to do that next Wednesday. BC, where are you going?
Probably the Twin Cities to mind his own business.
No, it's a Field of Dreams type of situation. My dad retired last year, and so for Christmas we gave him a golf trip, my brother and I.
That's
right.
We're
going through the Midwest. We're going up into Wisconsin. We're going to play Erin Hills, where the U.S. Open was. These courses are way above what a guy like a hacker should be on. So I'll probably shoot 122 or something. But it's going to be fun because you're with your dad and all that syrupy stuff, So it's going to be a good time.
BC, are you? You good? You're good at self-inventory, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Yo, man, you're putting me on the spot, Cam Newton style. Would you be a fun person to golf with?
Yeah.
Say okay.
I mean, I'm very supportive of even if a guy. You don't want to be that guy who compliments shots. Some people are over the top with their compliments on shots that are actually headed right or left a little bit, and the person's not happy on the tee shot, but you'll hear like two people behind you say, good ball, that looks good, I think you'll be all right with that, and the person at the tee is not satisfied at all with it. So sometimes being a good golf partner is knowing when to just shut up and not say a word. Because then you come off as just that kind of punk who's, it's like, all right, you're Mr. Positive, but not when you're supposed to be.
Hey, you know what I would hear sometimes? I'm dead serious. It'd go like 205 or 210 or something like, and they'd say, hey, now you got to do is just straighten that out.
Yeah.
No kidding. You don't say.
Right. You had the distance. It just went to the right.
You don't say.
If you would have hit that dead straight, dude, you'd be like,
it used to drive me crazy in baseball, BC, right? You'd hit those screamers, foul, and parents or somebody
straighten it out.
Hey, that's okay. Just straighten it out. You're like,
I'm not going to get that pitch again.
First of all, that was inside and under my hands, so that's probably why I pulled it. But hey, you guys do you back there. You keep cheering.
Yeah. Even in the majors, how often do you see a guy like he unloads on a pitch, but he's ahead of it? It's just foul. It would have been a home run, but it's foul by 10 feet. He's not coming back and I mean, 1 out of 100 times he's maybe coming back with a big swing, but otherwise it's a strikeout or ground out.
Right? Yeah, no. Normally I just say nothing but a long strike.
Man, BC, enjoy the father thing. I'm happy for you and a little envious at the same time.
I am too. I thought you were going to say you're going to Homer for that new course, but is that later on in the summer?
That is, yes. I am going to check that one out. We do have a tee time on a Sunday, and there's still one spot open. So I'm keeping.
Well, how are you?
Keep me in the back of the mind.
BC, how are you going to take some downtime if Nebraska appears to always ABR, man, always be recruiting, or ABC always be recruiting, because offers galore, and all of a sudden we got quarterbacks popping up all over the place.
Yeah, sometimes you got to just understand there's going to be an offer every day somewhere, just like it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and you just got to step away. But yes, you're right. As we kind of merge into Husker football talk here now, I mean that all, and they come from all over the place. I mean, you're seeing them from out west, of course. You're seeing them from down in Texas, down South Florida. They're hitting hard. Obviously in state. So they do keep you on your toes.
We're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Husker247BC on Twitter. The $1 million question, BC, and the question that we will answer later on in the show is, where does Nebraska pivot? now that Raiola is off the market, who is next quarterback-wise?
Where do we go from here now that all of the QBs are committed? I'm just kidding.
You got a hit. You got a hit.
Sorry.
I thought you were going to sing background there for a sec, BC.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to harmonize this early in the morning.
Oh, aren't you my little bathroom songbird? You better know the school song, BC.
I think this is one of those. I think this is one of those conversations where you don't have to have a surefire answer here. You don't have to pivot to this guy or that guy specifically. It's possible this could play out, and I've said this before, where it's in December you're seeing what's out there in the portal with a 20 or 21-year-old guy, who's been in the college game for a few years. So that's a possibility. I know that the plan was for there's some kind of wild card type guys like Kamari McClellan was a guy who was going to come up and throw in June. And, you hear Dante Reno's name sometimes attached to Satterfield because there is a connection there, but he's committed to South Carolina right now. So I don't know how much that one's in play, but I've said all along, I don't think, for a month or two, it's been headed toward it's probably not going to be Raiola, Nebraska, and they knew that over there. So even though this news is now it's public conversation for the last 72 hours, and we got to do the whole thing where we kind of review it. You got to always think about these things in terms of when did the coaching staff have a good feel for this? It wasn't the way it was going, and that was a while ago probably. And I don't think there's any sirens going off, and I think there's an understanding that there could be, if you needed that depth, options in the portal as well. So you don't necessarily have to get a high school QB in this class, but I do think it's good that they're laying the groundworks for 25, 26, 27 guys, because that's when I think you're going to really see this staff shine recruiting-wise when they actually have a full year or two to build up those relationships.
BC, we talked last week, and it was on the heels of Rizak. And listen, I get it. So I'm not one of those guys that Cluster and I had this conversation about 7-8 years ago about what we would want. This is when Cluster Johnson Jr., CJ Jr. was senior. And he said something interesting. He goes, as much personally as my feelings are X, Y, and Z, at the end of the day, I want Nebraska to be good. So I want kids to go there that can help them win. And I felt like that's where I land too. I don't really have an in-state bias in terms of, such and such. Now, there are kids that I think should get offers, but I'm not necessarily, if a kid decides to go someplace else, that it's necessarily a miss. Right.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I feel like there's an overreaction to it sometimes.
We kind of have a little bit of an in-state syndrome where we're up in arms over every kid, and sometimes it's not a miss.
No. And sometimes you didn't have a great shot with a kid because in certain cases they just want to get away. Like certain kids there's kids who come to Nebraska all the time. Where they'll say in their commitment stories to us, I needed a new territory. There's kids in South Florida who come up to Nebraska because it's a different environment than what they were used to, and they want to be a part of that. It goes the other way too. There's some kids who grew up here, they want to explore a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. And in the case of Rizak, obviously great option there with Notre Dame. They were first to the table with an offer. It sounded like they had a really strong connection with them. And he knew where he wanted to go very quickly with that. And, that's awesome for him. But it doesn't always have to be this thing where the coaching staff here gets dragged because you're not going to get every in-state kid. It's just not doable anymore. It never was, but especially in this day and age, I think you see Nebraska kids occasionally go to Iowa. You see Iowa kids go to Nebraska, all this stuff. That's just the way it is now. So I don't get as fired up about it as some, Damon.
BC, the competition is brewing at the fullback position. Landon Turnus is a guy that you wrote about. Obviously, Liebentritt is in the news and a part of that room now. Rule also talking about how he'll hold a fullback camp eventually. How does all of that show how serious Nebraska is to revive the fullback position?
Well, yeah, there's going to be great competition there, and I'm excited for those kids who, like Liebentritt, when he was coming out of high school at Sjuts, there wasn't an option for him in Nebraska's offense really, and that wasn't most places. So he's a quality player. It just had to be the right fit, right time, and I know he's fired up. And these guys, they just like, I think, the mentality that's sort of being built over in that program. You hear Rule talk with the phrase body blows. He talks about body blows and being that type of program. And I do think there's something to be said for not you don't have to live in with the fullback like it's 1993 around here. But I do think it can be a pretty instrumental part of offenses. We're seeing even in the NFL game some. I think the 49ers use it pretty well. And there's just there's a place for it. And it adds a physical aspect to your offense. And the cool thing is you can be versatile with it too. You can have like Janiran Bonner as a hybrid type guy, and maybe he's their 215 to 220 pound guy, and you can do fun stuff with him where you line him up there. And he looked like he was fit for the part. But then you can get that more traditional fullback too, which is some of the guys we're talking about. By the way, Turnus does seem like a freak when you look at like just the numbers he's putting up on the track, and you combine that with being a state wrestling champ. Those are the guys who, for a long time in this program, have thrived at that position. Guys who just are just tough guys you wouldn't want to meet in an alleyway. And it's great that you can find a spot for them.
BC, when you're taking a look at kind of those options along the fullback line, I was talking to about this with Andrew and our listeners yesterday. When you're looking at balance, offense and defense, and playing complementary football, because we heard that a ton, right? He even subtly referenced. Remember a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Yeah, Sat coach was an assistant offensive line coach, and it helps you be able to understand what teams are doing to you and call plays and play to your strengths," right? How much of like the fullback talk and tight end do you just think fits Coach Rule's personality, where he wants to have options, right? He doesn't want to be married to one particular thing because, as he likes to say, I don't like to leave anything to chance.
Yeah. And when we talk about tight end and fullback, we're talking about positions that they present all sorts of options within the offense now. It's just so cool, like what the tight end spot to me has become even in the last 15 to 20 years. It's a position so many kids want to play because like what Bonner's doing, you can line up and, all over the field. You can be in the backfield. You can be a dangerous weapon going out as a wide receiver. So it's exciting to have these different parts, different body types that you can use in a lot of different ways and give the defense a lot to think about without, like you're saying, being married to one specific thing. So I think I think they're very excited about having guys that you don't just have a niche role. You're a guy who can do 3 or 4 things, and that's going to make you a weapon for us some way, somehow, at some point.
We're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. BC, stay right there because we've talked about position swaps a lot this offseason, especially when talking about a guy like AJ Rollins, for example. But a name, well, that's exactly where I'm going here. The name that you like in the immediate term is Brody Tagaloa, and I wanted to ask, what about his spring has you believing that he could immediately be in the cards to make an impact?
Well, most of what I say about a player is always just repetition of what I hear from coaches, because we don't see enough over there, the media, for me to say like, oh, he's doing this or that. But you listen to Rule talk about certain guys, and I don't think Rule brings up anyone unintentionally. And, like on his radio show last week, it was one of the first guys he brought up. And when you hear him say he's just relentless, And he's a guy who he told Rule told Terrence Knighton, like, basically don't coach that out of him. Like you don't. There's that point where you just got to let a guy go, kind of, because he's just such a fireball. And he's interesting because, sort of like Bonner, had you mentioned a list of 5 or 6 guys like 2 weeks before spring ball to the general fan base that, could they be portal guys, or what's going to happen with them? Where do they belong? Both those guys, Bonner and Brody, would have been people that would have come up quickly on that list. And it's just so fascinating how over the course of a spring, that's completely done a 180. I mean, Bonner's going to have a role, and I think Brody's going to too, just from what you hear. It one of the reasons you say that is because Rule wants to play that in waves up front on that defensive line. He wants to have different lines who come in. And so I think there are going to be snaps for Brody. I think AJ's on a promising trajectory too. But I just think AJ Rollins was sort of the guy who came up real early, and so everybody sort of kept asking about him. And so Brody slipped under the surface a little bit until late, but he's a guy that people better keep in mind.
BC, I asked Andrew, and I think this stemmed from a question with Fudge. I can't even remember. I don't even know what day it is this week, but we talked about balance, right? Like whose defense looks a lot like their offense without one being significantly better than the other. And this was on the heels of me asking, okay, which side of the ball do you think will have an idea of how they want to play first? We went back and forth and him-hawed around. What team in the Big Ten for you closely resembles offensive and defensive balance?
Wow.
We gave 3 different answers.
Give me
somebody.
some.
So I think
I said Wisconsin.
I said I could entertain Illinois
and Minnesota was what Vogel said.
And Vogel said Minnesota. Now, we know in its totality it's probably Michigan, but I think the question was staying in the West.
I gotcha.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we all gave 3 different answers. Who do you think? Obviously, Iowa's defensive heavy, right? Ohio State's offensive heavy.
I said in the East, Penn State could be looked at as a share.
I would entertain Penn State. Because I think that's how Nebraska wants to play, right? I don't think they want one to be significantly better than the other. I think they want to be balanced in their evolution. Who closest resembles that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for giving me some clues too. I would say Illinois, because I really love what Bielema does, just with how he builds his roster and just builds toughness, and it makes me think of sort of what Rule's doing here. I just feel like when you play his teams, you just know you're going to get knocked in the mouth. You're going to have to stand up to them. I don't know what they're going to be.
And by the way, how about them? Shoot, they'll be back here this week. I hope they run into Nebraska, to be honest. How about Illinois sniffing around recruiting? They were here last week. Pyfrom's got an official there. Like, Illinois is like, and the funny thing about this, BC, just friend to friend, that was one of my few visits that I took was to Champaign when I was in high school. Camino Bell was my host.
Who was the head coach then?
I think it was it Trudeau? No, it wasn't Trudeau. Old guy, gray hair.
Okay.
Old guy, gray hair. Google that for me.
I got you.
1992 Illinois head coach.
Illinois is interesting though, because I obviously, I love their style of play last year. I think they're a real mystery team, like most of the teams in the West. So you look at a team that got knocked back by draft picks that are gone now going into this season. Illinois lost some really good players. So, and of course they lost their D coordinator who stirred that drink over there. So they have some questions to answer, but I love the way they attack, like Bielema sort of goes about it in building toughness. And that's why I love when you hear Rule speak, like what's the most important thing? You could go 100 ways with that answer. He always comes back to that word first and foremost. It's toughness. And it's, you got to start in the trenches. And you got to be that type of team in this league that can play in the conditions, I believe, in late October and November. The heat rule always speaks about the wind here, and it does seem like every day now it's like 25-mile-an-hour winds. You got to be that group who can grind out, 80 yards of rushing in the fourth quarter. And that's where I like how Illinois and Minnesota, for what they have, I don't always love their talent, but what they do with their talent, how they play to it, I like those two teams, how they attack.
Quickly here, BC, before we let you go, got about a minute and a half. I wanted to ask about Coach Satterfield in regards to recruiting, how much his name at his former stop at South Carolina carries over to what he's doing now. Like, do you envision him being somebody that's able to say, hey, while I was there, I was recruiting X person and I could bring him over? Is that something you see within his personality?
Yeah, I don't know. I actually got asked about that the other day. I think with this staff, it's always going to come back to recruiting as a whole and not just like one specific coach necessarily. And so it's always going to be like, hey, we're basically a family here who's been together at a lot of different places, and just look at the track record. If there's guys that we've developed who were good, really high rated recruits, and there's guys they've developed who were, 2-star recruits. And all of these guys have NFL backgrounds for the most part. And that, I think that's something you put in front of recruits, and Satterfield has it too. And I think the thing Satterfield can always speak about is he's coached, like we'd say, like assistant O-line coach, but he's been like every position coach there is during his tenure. And I think that can be effective too when you're talking to a recruit. So I don't think it's about one guy though, like one coach, like being connected to a player. I think it's a whole staff thing with this group. I really do.
Great. That's pretty astute.
Good call. Good call, BC.
Good stuff, BC. Enjoy the time with the fam, man. Take advantage of it. It makes me happy. Warms my heart, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, B.
That's Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Can we get more into that after the break?
Absolutely. It's your show.
No, it's not.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Andrew Rogers, Damon Benning. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Let's postpone my tease one more segment and talk to Kevin Sjuts before we go anywhere. I am a little bit, not going to lie. Kevin Sjuts, sports director at 1011, now at Kevin Sjuts on Twitter, as DB likes to say. Twitter. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Okay, Sjuts, what's up, buddy? Are you, you're kind of, you do it all. Will we see you at the semis for Lincoln East?
Absolutely. I feel like I've taken up residence.
Let's go.
Omaha this week.
What about let's go one step further with that. Will we see you at 10 when Grand Island's there, or is that out of your viewing area?
Stadium for the state track and field championships here shortly.
Yeah, that does go up. So
we're doing the double. We got state track, and then we're gonna go to Lincoln East, and the way the new format has it.
Yep, you can do it.
Lose at 4, they would play then immediately after, and same goes for 2 other teams from our area. Norris is playing at 4, same deal with them, and then Malcolm. Yeah, they're probably going to win Class C. I'd expect them to take care of business. So yeah. I'm kind of on standby for what the nightcap might look like.
Yeah, shout out to Coach, or I guess Soup, Ryan Twilliger, my former teammate out there at Malcolm, who's gone from football coach to running a school district. Sjuts, let me ask you something real quick, because we got into this yesterday and the day before about Norris. Did you see the boom of what Hickman, the community, has been able to do, and kind of them tapping in to the outskirts of Lincoln? Did you kind of see this coming for their sports programs?
Seeing it right now with You're seeing it right now with Waverly too. As
we brought them up. Good call.
Yeah, as Lincoln continues to grow, some of the guys that play at Norris, their address is Lincoln. If you're south of, I believe, Yankee Hill, you can go down to Norris. So it's not like you're just a bunch of boys that live out on an acreage that are playing down at Hickman. It's a large school district geographically, but they have a great talent pool. And plus, when some of these schools that are, whether it's right outside of Omaha, right outside of Lincoln, once they take hold of some success in a sport, it becomes so attractive. And Norris has done it with baseball primarily. Their basketball program has had some really good years over the past 5 years. And then, you look at some of the girls' sports as well. Norris is a machine right now. Their girls' soccer program is great. Their volleyball program, oh my goodness, they're going to be a state championship contender. If it wasn't for Omaha Skutt, Norris probably would have 5 volleyball championships over the past 7 years.
Completely agree. Right? It reminds me of the teams that Jordan played against where they weren't supposed to be able to get over the hump, like Barkley and those guys. I'm like, well, Barkley would have a championship if it wasn't for Jordan. Right? Like, don't hold that against Chuck.
Right. It's so true. I mean, like, Skutt, they're awesome. And, they could win in any class. And so that's just kind of what naturally those Class B schools are up against. But if you take Skutt out of the equation, I think Norris is probably, 1B.
Now, you said you were headed to track and field today, and track and field is something that first I'm going to ask, what running shoes are you wearing?
Asics.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going Asics. I'm going to guess. Take a guess.
He's going to have Brooks on.
Oh, Andrew's right. Brooks,
Let's go! Oh, fudge. Come on! Come on! Yeah, baby!
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength. I love it. This is some good Wednesday juju right here. There's a couple of keys. There's a couple of keys from a reporter's perspective for the state track and field meet. Number 1, running shoes. Got to have them, otherwise you're just an idiot. Number 2, you must wear sunscreen because
that's a must.
The greatest sunburn you can ever get is if you go to state track and field and you're not prepared, and you're going to be pink. You're not ready. You are pink.
Salmon.
And then number 3, you got to make sure your clothes. You're not wearing cloth shirt. You got to have a dry fit shirt.
It's got to breathe. Got to breathe.
This is what you pack in the suitcase. I'm there.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Kevin, because we've been talking about multi-sports and what sports correlate and translate and blah, blah, blah these last couple of 2-3 days. How much do you lean on the multi-sport folks as feature pieces as opposed to what he or she is just doing exclusively because of track?
Maybe not as much as you would think. I don't know. Like, we'll spotlight Cale Fountain. He's awesome. I know it's not track, but it's baseball.
Well, he can hit a ball 400 feet, so that's pretty good.
I mean, if anybody's listening and hasn't been to the state baseball tournament and you want to watch a dude, go watch Norris because Cale Fountain, he is special. He's still a junior too. But to get back to your question, there are a number of multi-sport athletes that happen to just be attractive for some of our feature stories, guys that, had success, especially here in Lincoln. The basketball season was so much fun, and you get through basketball ride, and then you look up and you're like, oh, wow, he's a track guy, or oh, wow, he's a baseball guy. And there's so much crossover with some of those athletes. And I guess it just speaks to the overall athleticism and lack of specialization for some of the premier athletes in our viewing area.
What we miss? What are we going to miss at the end of Capo's career from Lincoln East?
Oh, I'm glad you brought him up. One, he is just an awesome, awesome kid. He's very mature, and if you talk to him, it's like talking to an adult. Just his natural power when he throws the disc.
He's gonna leave and go to school, and we're gonna be like, God, that guy was really good at multiple sports, and he got almost no run.
You realize he did diving?
Yes. Oh yeah. I follow him on Twitter solely for that reason. I just want to see him dive.
He's a massive dude. Some of these divers. I'm not trying to shame diving in any way, but they all have a specific body type. And then this dude that's an offensive lineman gets on the diving board, and you're like, what? How does this make sense? But he's athletic. And this is just a guy that's just willing to take on any challenge. So Sam is going to throw the shot today, the disc tomorrow. And last year, he wasn't healthy when he went to the state track and field championships. So I think that there's a chip on his shoulder. And not to mention, at one point this season, he had the best discus throw in the country. He's a special talent.
Now, Sjuts, you have football and volleyball roughly paired up. You have basketball that is more of a standalone, and then you have,
Except for
track
wrestling.
and wrestling. Great call there,
Especially with
especially
East.
here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, wrestling for sure. And then you have baseball, track, and
Soccer.
Thank you. I was like, what am I missing? You have those pairings. Okay, is this the best time of year for you? Because it's warm outside. You have 3 things. You have a lot to cover. Like, is this your favorite time, or are you more of a football, volleyball, basketball, wrestling guy?
This is the most sleepless time because.
Yeah, I noticed there's been no video game tweets lately between you and the fam.
Well, I did ask my older son yesterday. I was like, "Hey, you want to play the show? I've got about 10 minutes." He's like, "You can't play a game in 10 minutes." But it's a good time of year. Plus, there's this energy right now about school's about to let out, and some of these kids they're in a naturally good mood because of where they're at in the school year, and the weather has turned. So there's energy, and that helps get you through. I'm a fall guy. I really enjoy, state volleyball, state football, when the playoffs are going through. That's a pretty fun time, in my personal opinion. And then, winter's pretty awesome, too, because I still think that the state wrestling championships is the best event the NSAA does. And Championship Saturday of wrestling, it's number 1 in my book. I think it's just the coolest thing that they do. But this is fun too. It's just really, really busy because of the overlap of the sports that are happening all simultaneously.
As our listeners have found out, you're naturally funny anyway. But on a lighter note, I'll get you out of here on this. How much time did you spend Googling, since you've been doing this over the years, the best way to get to places in order to be as efficient as possible?
Oh, funny you bring that up. Last night, with the baseball games going on today, I was on, Google Maps saying, how far is it from Tricky Field to Millard North? How far is it from Burt Stadium to Tal Anderson? I can tell you right now, it's like 7 minutes from Burt to one of the baseball sites, and we're going to try to make it happen today.
Heck yeah.
Oh, my man.
Been there, done that.
Love the energy, man. Always hilarious.
Hey, Kevin, good luck, man. And we'll probably see you out and about today.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't forget the sunscreen, guys.
Hey,
I'm SPF 10.
The difference between us and you is we can stand in the shade. You still have to be out with your camera.
All right, be well.
See you, man.
I just learned what SPF meant like a year ago.
Oh.
Well, I'm black.
Stop. We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show. 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved at any point, Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, 590 ESPN Omaha, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We wrap up the show with a guest, Brad Klein, former PGA Tour caddy, at 9:45. We'll also play Two for You a little bit later on. But before we get there, Jay called us yesterday.
Yes.
And asked, hey, the fan base, as us fans here in Nebraska, we want to know some other names that are on your guys' minds for potentials of, hey, where can Nebraska turn now that Dylan Raiola is not on the market anymore? And we said one name in Stone Sounders yesterday because he was on campus with Coach Rule, and that's somebody in the 2025 class that they are
will be
keeping an eye
coming
on.
back.
Correct. Even though if you look on recruiting sites, he has warm interest other places, one being Kentucky, doesn't mean much. Right? He will come back, and Coach Rule is going to do his due diligence with him. But outside of him, who would you say is on your list? You don't have to give 4. I know Jay asked for 4, and if you can if you want. I think he asked for 5, but you had mentioned that you may have 4. You don't have to give all 4, but if you had some names on your list, who would they be? Because I have 2 that I'll add that I don't know if you'll have, but we'll see.
Is one Kaiser out of Missouri?
No.
Okay, so I think Sam Kaiser's a guy out of Columbia that could surface. He's close. I think it's important for Nebraska and their staff or they've let it be known that it's important for them to be in Missouri. So I think Sam Kaiser is a guy that will pop up on the radar. I think Connor Moberly is another quarterback that's going to come up. He's from right down the road. I'll actually be very, very close there this weekend. I'm going to try to ask and fact find because I'm in Des Moines. Just Breeze and Mike and I are going. He's in Altoona, which is, if you've ever been to Adventureland, that's where Altoona is.
Oh, is that really it?
Yeah. They got a great.
Would never have guessed that's the town name.
Funny story about Altoona. I had a smoked ribeye there from Jethro's barbecue, which was unbelievable. Never had smoked a steak or had a smoked steak until I had a smoked ribeye at Jethro's. And I also realized
you can't mess up smoking.
And
if you're good at it, like no matter what's in there, it's going to come out good.
I've probably thrown away at least 4 racks of ribs.
Well, once you get it down to a science,
a bone.
Once you get it down to a science, smoked ribs are insane.
Fickle, like hit and miss. I'm like, So I've had some good ones, some bad ones. I've thrown away some racks. Right?
But I meant like most meats that you throw in a smoker. If you're really good, it comes out
And I would say I'm always a work in progress, but I like Moberly from Altoona. We obviously heard about BC and the connections with what's going on with South Carolina. I'm not so sure if you're looking for two on the local level, because obviously I haven't said your two quarterbacks yet, right?
Correct.
Okay, so keep an eye on Anthony Rizak.
That was one on my list, but I knew you were going to say him.
Keep an eye on Anthony Rizak. I know they're going to want him to camp. Anthony's one of those guys that I think you have to just watch. He's had multiples. Iowa State has watched him throw 3 times. 3 times. So I think you have to keep an eye on Anthony Rizak. He's dual threat. He's 6'4". He's a little bit bigger than Teddy. I think Teddy's a legit 186er, 185er. I think Anthony's a little bigger. He's low 190s, roughly almost 6'4", long frame, winner, true dual threat, fast, going to really, really grow. I think the senior evaluation on him, especially early in the season, right? We have some big games with Prep and Grand Island and Bellevue West, right? So it could be a busy month of September for Anthony Rizak. Another name locally, Carson Ronner, is one that's coming up from Elkhorn South.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Ronner, it's nothing more than, if you're a good recruiter, which I think needs to be associated with talent evaluator, you have to get outside the offense that he plays in, because he doesn't. It's quarterback friendly. It's not recruiting friendly. A lot of 2 receiver routes, a lot off of run action, some obvious passing downs. They run the ball at Elkhorn South. So Coach Rosenberg, who I think the world of, I told him at the clinic in Lincoln, I just like to come sit with him a couple of days. I like his leadership style. He's not loud. He's not ill-willed. He's not mean-spirited, but his teams have good discipline. So I like to watch kind of how he does that, because I'm captivated, and they win a lot. And Ronner's a guy, I think, locally, but it's like when you're evaluating quarterbacks and you just watch film, that's why I think knowing how to watch tape is important. What's the route tree look like? What's the passing concepts? Do they have backside options?
Mm-hmm.
Are they a first read guy? Like, that's one of the things that I like about Anthony. Now, I lack neutrality because I know our concepts, and they're tough. Like, I like our passing concepts. It's all predicated on conflict, right? I mean, you don't throw for 2,000, run for 1,000,
right,
and you're getting 1/3 of the field reads, right? Like, it's a big boy offense.
Now go ahead.
So with Ronner, I think sometimes, and some of these other guys, like Circle is another guy like that at North. And I'm not saying, I'm not stating an opinion on the player per se. I'm saying when you watch quarterback play, sometimes you just have to watch how a guy throws it and then pit it against how he's playing. Again, another offense, a lot of 2 receiver concepts. Sometimes they don't always throw in advantageous downs. So you can't always hold that against a guy. Now you can look at, turnover ratio and stuff like that. Now, it just so happens, I think those 2 aforementioned quarterbacks, their best and worst games, and you can go back and pay attention who came against who. But I use those 3 quarterbacks to say, if you watch those 2 games, watch North versus Elkhorn South, the tale of 2 quarterbacks in quarterback play, but similar in terms of their skill sets. If you just watch, like, let's say 7-on-7.
Okay.
Yeah. Ronner and Rizak, both bigger guys. I think Anthony's going to be the biggest of the bunch. And he's growing, right? Has some advantages. He's got a good relationship with guys like Paul Chris, who is family with Bob Greco, who is the former baseball coach at Westside. So there's lots of little intricacies, but those are 4 guys that I would say, a couple within the 500-mile radius and a couple locally, I'd say take a look at.
One that I really like, great points there, especially with the guys in our backyard, because I think that's highly important.
And I think it's important to Nebraska, which is why, which is kind of the catalyst for me saying
correct. And there's one guy that's actually right out of Nebraska, and he's my sleeper. And I call him a sleeper because I'm a little biased to the area too. Because
so we got to be going to Sioux City.
When I was back in that area,
okay,
there was a team in Mobile, Iowa, Woodbury Central, smaller school, but they have a quarterback that he goes by the name of Drew Klunder. And I shouldn't say he goes by the name. That is his name that he was given at birth. And I just really like how he operates. He led all classes in passing yards, and stats aren't everything. But he just has a really good feel for the game. Little raw when it comes to his footwork, but he's not afraid to stay in the pocket. He's good rolling out at the same time, and when he feels pressure, he steps through well. And I really like his mobility. Sees the field well. I know he comes from a small town, small school, in a small class, but I don't think that's everything all the time, because by covering kids at all levels, Cooper DeJean gave me some really good perspective when I was up there.
How about his little brother, like drawing rave reviews? He appears, for all intents and purposes, he's going to be a phenom. He's 6'4".
Yeah, and he will.
He's the biggest. He's the biggest of the bunch.
When we were up in what's the OABCIG? When we were up in OABCIG, I don't exactly know. Was it Ida Grove? I think that's where they play. People were saying, even when Cooper was the guy, the quarterback, the DB, his little brother's going to be better.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't believe that when I'm watching the guy play. Same thing in South Dakota when I heard Paul Bruns. Isaac's actually the better of the two. Is he? I'm watching Paul real time.
I would say at the same age, from a skill standpoint, just skill, not the intangibles with Caleb, with his competitiveness and IQ. Micah's more skilled,
which is interesting.
I think at the same age, he's in his totality.
And maybe
he's a better basketball.
And maybe I put the blinders up because I like to watch real time, and I'm give him 2 years.
Listen, I'm with you. I'm a big Coop guy too.
Right?
I'm a big Cooper guy.
But Klunder reminds me of a shortstop when he plays. He's
twitchy.
Well, he can do some little side throws. He can get a little fancy, but he's accurate too at the same time. Iowa State's given him the most interest, and I'll give you one more when we come back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Before we get into this next athlete that I wanted to discuss, I want to take a moment and tell you about Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's is your one-stop shop for all your car needs. They have numerous locations that you can take your car to whenever you have a problem. I know DB's done it before. I've at least tried and have yet to find my way in there because I'm always out of office hours when I need some help. But I am due for an oil change here soon. So that's where I'm taking my car, and you should too, because Dingman's has your back, and they are the people that will treat you the best in the industry as well. If you have an issue with your car, take it over to Dingman's. Now, I closed out talking about Klunder and said that Iowa State was kind of the one showing the most interest in him. And I wanted to add, too, that Iowa State, I was monitoring their process when they recruited Hunter Deckers, and I thought they did a really good job of that, and I think they do a good job.
They're unbelievably thorough. Remember, that was the school that I kind of used as an example of. You asked me those tough questions about recruiting, and Iowa State was one of those schools that basically said, hey, listen, we haven't had good success with legacy kids. And, you know, kind of his vibe is he's a little indifferent, right? You know, and they went as far as to say, because he was going to fly, he was going down with another family, and they have access to a plane. So they were going to shoot down on a school day. And the weather wasn't great because of the wind. I mean, you get a small plane, and
sure.
And he goes, hey, I know you guys had to reschedule, but it's a 2-hour and 20-minute drive. Like, we've got other guys we're recruiting around the country that make the drive 5-6 hours. And I remember kind of being offended. Right. And I'm sure it wasn't like, I'm sure Coach Samanji's looking at me like, oh my gosh, you did not just say this to Coach Benning. Like, he's been here, done that. Here we go. So we went back and forth for probably 10, 12 minutes. on me having my point was, hey, look, stop worrying about me. Stop worrying about the last name.
That's your point in every conversation.
Always, right? Like, do what you do. Well, coach said this and this. And listen, man, if you want him, go get him. If you don't, you don't. I said the same thing to Frost. I said the same thing to Chins. I said the same thing to Rule. Like, I'm telling everybody, if you want him, you do. If you don't, you don't. Like, we'll figure it out, right? He's going to be good wherever he goes. I truly believe that, right? So I do, and they probably, I'd have to ask Coach Lamanji because I'm only there about 90% of the time. I would say of school visits at our particular school. Now, Coach Huffman may say something different. Coach Rosenberg may say something different. Coach Martin may say, whoever the other schools are. I don't know what Central would say. Iowa State, Minnesota. Iowa State, Minnesota. I think you have to put Nebraska in that group. K-State. There's a handful of schools that have been there the most. Iowa State is definitely in that discussion. Now, Iowa and Minnesota are the only two schools, to my knowledge, that brought their head coach. So Coach Ferentz and Coach Fleck and Coach Rule, obviously, because
I know Coach Campbell was present when they recruited Deckers.
Good call. See, I'm forgetting. Thank you. Coach Campbell did come to Westside. So I say all that to say they do their due diligence, especially at the quarterback spot. Because I didn't know you were going here with your talk, but they've watched Anthony throw multiple times. And I know they went and watched Circo throw at North, right? Like so I know it's like with quarterbacks, it's different. The two positions I think are the most different in their recruiting process. If you're a good kicker, they offer kickers late. They try to give them PWOs. They wait till they see you in person. They want to get you on campus because they understand college versus high school goalposts. So recruiting for kickers can go slow, as does quarterbacks, but primarily because of the portal.
Yes.
Getting older quarterbacks out of the portal versus high school guys. So
and
there are some good ones, right? So I think those two recruiting processes go really, really slow. And so I like it because I mean, take your time.
Well, and I just appreciate
Tyler Cherry is the other guy that I was going to say.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
And I listen, and I only know this because two of the schools that have been at our school, Indiana and Illinois, and we talk about other quarterbacks in the fold and who they've offered, Tyler Cherry has come up. So I know Nebraska, and it's with three schools that are in the hunt, right? Pittsburgh is offered, I think, obviously with Eric Ingerson in the discussion. Penn State is offered, I think, obviously with Penn State making offers here locally. Indiana, I think that's centered around Christian Jones. I knew that they had offered, and Illinois, who's been here
plenty of times.
A couple of times in just a few short days. Those are the schools you got to worry about. Like, why do they keep making? Like, how many times have
Michigan State for me is a school that I monitor a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Like in Coach Huffman, I use him because I just know Penn State and Oklahoma have been to his school quite a bit. Obviously, with Helms and a couple of the offers that went out from Penn State. So there are some schools that have really good relationships with high schools because I think they trust the coaches. So far, I can get a good insight on the other quarterbacks that are in the area because we have a quarterback that's on the table. That's where I get the Cherry reference from.
Now I'll go northeast for my last one.
Okay.
And I'll go to Rule's old stomping grounds up in that way. Lawrence, Massachusetts, Central Catholics, 2025, Blake Hebert.
Yeah.
And is it Abear? I'm assuming it's Abear because of Bobby Abear.
Yep.
Which is funny. The Seinfeld episode
where
George is like, it's like Herbert, but without the R.
Yeah.
Abear. Like he can place the ball wherever he wants. He kind of, when I watched him huck it, I'm like, man, like, and I'm probably getting way ahead of myself, but I'm like, you could probably throw it as far as DR can. Like, I mean, I just was watching him launch it. And a lot of guys can. I mean, you got to be accurate when you do it. And I thought Abear was. Nebraska has shown interest in him.
Yep.
Satterfield's made his way up there. He's good with reads on the RPO. I know they want to get use out of the quarterback in regards to running a little bit or even just playing a little more small ball type. So he's a guy for me that I'm like, he has 14 schools interested in him. But if you can stay on his radar for 2025, that's a guy I like too in the Stone Sounders category.
When you say interested, have they offered? Did you do that?
I did not see an offer.
Okay.
I believe everything was just interest with him.
Gotcha.
I'll have to go back and double check, so don't quote me on that. But that is, again, when I talked about Michigan State was on all these guys' radar.
Yeah, I wouldn't say worried, but Michigan State is definitely on my radar. Right.
Well, and they have everything to prove right now.
I just know that they're being aggressive, and TJ Hollowell has really good wherewithal.
Mm-hmm.
Their DB coach calls quite a bit. I just sent a high school coach to voicemail. Obviously Wisconsin must have been at Omaha West Side this morning, because I'm just like, I want to say to these guys, no, I'm not I'm at work, but I don't think they care, right? I mean,
they're just calling.
Not only do they not probably know, it's just like, we're going to give this a shot so you can see that I called anyway. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of schools. It's a big week. I know Nebraska will be in town on Thursday. And the head man could potentially, I don't know where he's at with his visits per school, because they just turn the rules over about unlimited. But I do know Coach White will be in Omaha on Thursday, which I'm kind of excited.
Which is good, because as you said,
they need it.
As you said, there's schools in town today, and Wisconsin, of course, being one of them. I'm assuming that they talked to Caleb.
Yeah. That's what his text said.
So
I mean, worry isn't the word, because I can in one vein say, hey, don't worry about me. Recruit how you normally would, and then say I'm worried. But Wisconsin is a team, and people hear what I say, right? They've been around me long enough to know, like, I'll tell you, like, when my radar is pinging, like, I do know Tressel does a really good job, and so does Hitchler, who is their safeties coach.
Now with Caleb, he's such an interesting guy, and I feel like
I screened his call. Did you like that? He was not very happy.
Personality wise, you really have to, say the right things for him to really buy into you. And I'm kind of curious, like, if you took like how Wisconsin talks, how Iowa has spoken, how K-State has spoken, how Nebraska has spoken, how all these have spoken, like, who do you think has like spoken to him, like in him, like spoken to,
like into
the
him?
core,
like into
yeah,
him?
of Caleb Benning?
Good question. Everybody's different. K-State challenged him.
Everybody.
I think I remember you saying that.
K-State challenged him, so I like that, right? Like, he would not tweet out that offer because they wanted to see him work out.
Well, he's not an offer tweeter anyway.
No. So, but he likes Coach Klein a ton. So I think he liked the way that they challenged him, right? Without any junior film. Nebraska has been really, really relational. They make their shots count. Iowa's done it with volume. They finally had Coach Parker in last week. Everybody knows LeVar Wood's prowess in this region. Very, very relational. Like, they've been the most committed. Wisconsin, especially on the heels of Michigan Lance's call yesterday, it's surprising you asked me that. And I didn't get into this because I haven't told any. I don't know if I said this out loud or not. So the way that Wisconsin got in the hunt to begin with, unfortunately, has everything to do with what Michigan Land said yesterday about getting inside the kid's head, understanding two sides to the coin. When Wisconsin reoffered after the Fickle hiring, and Coach Tressel and Coach Mitchell and Coach Hischler came, this is weird. One of the things that he was moved by was they asked him about dealing with divorce at a young age.
Wow.
And how he dealt with the split household and, we don't use the term step. We call her J2.
Mm-hmm.
Her being in the building and them having such a good relationship and this, that, and the other. And so he called immediately. He's like, man, I can't believe, and this was just like 3 months ago. He's like, he's like, do you know what Wisconsin talked to me about? I go, what's that?
Not about football, not about this.
And at first I was kind of bothered. Like initially, right?
Like you're prying for details.
Yeah, because all his text said was, we're going to Madison. And I go, question mark, what? And he said, call me on break. So then he told me about the conversation.
Yep, I've never heard this information.
I've never heard anybody say that before. Like nobody's ever really talked to him about that before.
So you were bothered
at first.
The first,
probably, if I'm being honest, probably the first 3 minutes. But then once I called him and he explained it to me, he goes, it was just interesting. Like they really wanted to know who I was as a person. Oh, okay. Which is why I wonder sometimes in recruiting, like there's a couple kids I know locally, high profile. I'll use Christian Jones and Tyson Terry as examples. Like I know why they gravitate towards certain schools. And it's not because people talk to them about their numbers. It's because of the relationships. I know why Teddy chose Notre Dame. These ding-dongs, he's probably on the clock or they made him commit. No, they didn't. Do you know what they did? They put an inordinate amount of time in a hurry. And so he felt a connection.
They got to know.
So
him.
For all the numeric data we crank out, and what did Kalen say about Missouri? So we hear all these people. What did we just hear Raiola say about Georgia?
Yeah.
So for all recruiting and recruiters put in terms of other things, what's it ultimately boil down to?
Your relationship.
Relationships. Relationships.
Which is why Nebraska's doing a good job of putting that first.
Right.
With everybody, not just Caleb.
And it starts with Trev, though. Because Trev said, hey, listen, I need to put my athletic department together like this. I need my staff to look like this. I need this in a head coach. Because if we're ever going to combat the transfer portal, we need to make this a desirable place to be for well-rounded, whole, as he would say, whole people.
We needed to do something.
Not just athletes, not just students, whole people. I want you to eat and be able to feel comfortable. I want you to go to school and be able to be comfortable. I want you to be able to talk about what's going on in your personal life and be able to be comfortable. I need to diversify and build my staff with those kind of skill sets to combat, well, I don't feel good because this coach just left, or this was the only coach I had a relationship with and it didn't go that way. Like he wants it to be a place that's hard to leave. And guess who echoes that sentiment? His coach. Right?
The guy they brought in.
Hey, I'm not going to run guys off like such and such and such and such do at other schools. I had some extra scholarships. You know what I did? I didn't use those in the portal. I used those on in-house guys. Like at the end of the day, the relationship building is going to be it. And again, you're talking to a guy that's not hung up on being married with this in-state fanfare. Not everybody's a miss. You weren't getting Caden Helms. You just weren't. You weren't getting him from Bellevue West. through no fault of your own or whether you put the full court, he didn't want to be here. You weren't getting Avante Dickerson. He didn't want to be here. You weren't getting Micah Riley Ducker. He didn't want to be here. Doesn't make them misses. It just means it's not your time.
Right.
You laid it on the line for Dylan Raiola. Guess what?
Good on you.
He didn't have the relationship with Sat that he did other people.
It was a no before you started.
He doesn't know what the wide receiving core is going to look like. There's
if you
lots
didn't put effort in, it was going to be a no anyway.
Right? So it's like sometimes it's just not your time. We spend a lot of time as people worrying about if what we're doing is good enough. Is it enough? What are people saying? Sometimes we need to just focus on the good that we do, like what we can control, and then rest in it.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to be complacent, but rest in it. Hey, am I doing the best that I can? You've heard me say this 1,000 times. If I've laid it on the line and I've done the best that I can, at some point lay your ass down to bed and go to sleep. Close your eyes. Stop worrying about what you didn't do or what who said. Was it the best you could do? And I'm telling you, man, that's why they're at peace with the Raiola thing.
And when you say sometimes it's just not your time, it makes a whole lot of sense when you talk about a new staff. Like, it's probably not going to be your time.
Well, I said it 2 months ago, right? Like
time.
I said, I think with Dylan, it's just bad timing.
You have no wins to back yourself up, and kids want to win. They want to go somewhere that wins.
And you think that doesn't drive Coach Rule? He told us. He said it out loud in the presser. Hey, man, we got to give them a reason to want to come here. But in the same vein, I do appreciate you taking a leap of faith.
And it goes back to the relationships that you're talking about. Where can you win? You can win in the relationship category. That's why I asked BC, and what I was going to bring up too when we talked about all the quarterbacks, because it was kind of intertwined. Can Coach Satterfield carry over some of those relationships? Like, is that his personality? Because a name that people have tossed around is Dante Reno, who was committed to South Carolina. Now, he hasn't reopened or has interest in reopening his recruitment, but that's why I wanted to know, because Satterfield was a part of that. And so can relationships like that
and
carry
remember
over with the staff?
And they made a fantastic hire, right, in Beamer, right? So,
yeah.
So if relationally they feel good there, that may trump that may trump the Satterfield deal.
And it absolutely could. But that's why I wanted to know those things. Like, I like to know those things, because when you lose a guy at the position, when you lose Casey Thompson, when you're down to 2-3 guys in the room, you lose Torres, you lose a bunch of other guys. Well, as you kind of work back to, are you going to stick with 2024? Like, are you going to try to get in there, or are you going to wait for 2025? Are you going to mess with the portal? We talked about that with Vogel a little bit. As we learn about some of those things, I also want to learn about the coach at the same time.
Yeah, I could tell you, like, the guys that bring their head coaches or their position coaches locally, I think it matters. I mean, ask Danny about the relationship with Drink. Right? Like, sometimes those things matter. Well, Gundy with Zane.
Well, and Mizzou gets to bowl games. Oklahoma State gets to bowl games. Those things matter too.
No, I'm with
you.
A lot. I'm with you. But yeah, the whole Wisconsin thing, it caught me off guard.
But it's, as much as it's kind of like entering your personal life, or maybe going a little too deep at the same time.
It's part of the story, though.
It's a part of the story.
It is part of the story. It's part of the story.
And how much has he grown as a person from that age to this point? That's what they want to know. They want to get that, because when you're hit with adversity at the youngest of age, and to where you are now and how you've grown, I mean, that that stretch of growth is a lot more than the growth that I've had from my life up until this point.
And he is one of those people that's heard me tell the stories of, like, he knows very well the Xavier Betts stories. Or Xavier Watts, or unfortunately, the Calvin Strong, some of these, the Easton Sticks, right? Where he's heard me talk to their parents or coaches, or, Easton's dad, Mike, is a really good friend. And I said, I just, why I love Easton? You don't have to babysit him. He knows his sense of self-worth. He knows his value. He knows what he brings to the table. So he's heard those things from from an early age, right? So he comes to the table assuming he has value. He doesn't know that he's competing with 150 other good players around the country, right? All he's worried about is, hey, man, like, I'm pretty important. What about me?
He's worried about me.
Right. So it's just the dynamic. And so I think we miss the boat sometimes with some of the local guys and recruiting. Like, don't hold it against Bellevue. Stop saying stupid stuff like Coach Huffman doesn't like Nebraska. His loyalty isn't to the state school. His loyalty is to the kids,
to his players.
You
to
want to
his
put
guys.
So stop saying that, right? And I'm not vouching for it. I'm just like, you guys are. It's not very smart. He hasn't had good success there with his guys, but he still loves the school. Stop holding that against him. Doesn't matter.
When we come back,
case by case.
When we come back, Brian, we'll touch with you, or we'll get in touch with you, and then we'll play 2 for You. Stick around.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, live from H&H Chevrolet Studios. This is Coffee and Cream with my man Andrew Rogers. Hey, listen, I appreciate the kind words you find, folks. Again, that's just impromptu radio. We're just talking. So
it's all we ever do. We just kind of talk.
I appreciate
some things
that.
I don't have anything to talk about.
I almost expounded on something, but before we do, if I've caused you personal injury or you're not happy with me because I've got you in your feels, or you're happy and you feel like you need to make amends for somebody that you have hurt and you maybe need a legal team, hit the folks at Dyer Law. I'm telling you, they got a tremendous team. Personal injury, do with that what you will. Great location at on South 117th. That's just off of Arbor Street. Driven by us there many a time. Or you can give them a call, 402-393-7529, or visit Dyer.law. You got me in my feels a little bit with the whole Wisconsin and the asking about divorce thing, and with on the heels of what Michigan Lance said yesterday about DNA and getting inside kids, they're young kids. I had to admit, because that's the first time I said out loud that I was actually offended, right? But as I talked to their coach, he's like, hey, I've been at Grand Valley State for 20 years, and I'm one of the guys on Fickle's staff that we don't have a previous relationship, so I have to constantly remind myself that I'm enough. And I was like, this is a grown man that coaches football that just said to a stranger, I have to know that where I've been and what I've done is enough, and to continue to be true to myself. Because I told him I'd never heard anybody approach recruiting that way, right? Because, and stop me if you've heard me say this, I just said it yesterday with why you think I have a man crush on Coach Rule.
No, I know you have a man crush. I don't think.
He's emotionally available.
Those were the words you used.
Men are so worried about being emotionally available that it compromises who we are. We're protectors and caregivers by nature.
Rub some dirt on it,
right? We need a mission to conquer, somebody to protect, and honor to uphold. If we operate in those continuums, we probably feel pretty good as men. So, I mean, because that's just the core of who we are. At the end of the day, man, we just want to be respected. Just respect me unconditionally. Just respect me unconditionally. Women, on the other hand, historically, just want to be loved. They want to be loved unconditionally. But what happens? When men feel disrespected, they act unloving. And when women feel unloved, they disrespect. Mm-hmm. Right? So
wow.
It's right?
100%, 1000%, because I talk with Ashley about this all the time when we talk personalities of each other. And like, she is just a lover in regards to, can we just watch a movie and snuggle on the couch? Like, she wants to be like, she wants the physical touch, and she wants the words of affirmation.
Yeah.
She needs those. Yeah. Meanwhile, for me, like, I
want her to respect your craft.
Well, I meant more the like I not only just that, just I am only like affirmation type. Like I don't need the physical touch. Like I love physical touch, don't get me wrong, but like when you talk about like all of these things that kind of make up your personality, like those would probably supersede tangible gifts and things like that. But the respect thing at the end of the day is what I always strive for. Always.
Isn't it weird how I said to you, the weird thing, and not that Dion is in my medulla oblongata, but remember, I grew up as a Dion fan, right? I had the Golden Gate Bridge when he was at San Francisco on my wall. Dumas and Holbein used to make fun of me. I was a primetime guy. The duality of him coming off, like, because I follow him on IG, and sometimes
he makes me shake my head.
Sometimes sometimes I chuckle. Sometimes I'm moved. I listen to him on stage or on a platform, talk about his mom, or style over substance. He's such a dichotomy because at the core, I don't think it's about the flash and dash, but it's really all we see.
Because on social media, that's what caused him to turn into this.
Yeah, when Dave sent me that picture on social media of his truck, and he goes, "Isn't this little man syndrome?" There was this part of me, and Dave's super smart, so like it has my attention, and I'm like, kinda. But do you know what I think?
No big deal.
But do you know what I think it is? I also think he's earned the right.
But social media made him extra.
I think he does come across as extra. He does. But again, excuse me, at the end of the day, when I look at like effective people in leadership, because this is really what it's about, right? How many words a day would you think Bill says, our boss? Not a ton to us.
Not to us, but I'm sure he talks a ton to a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know though.
Well, he's so busy, it's meeting after meeting after meeting.
Yeah, but
that's why I would guess that.
Okay, so I watch him under duress in stressful situations.
But he's calm. He's thinking. He's not speaking.
Doesn't say a ton, right? So I watch, or somebody who talks a lot to us, right? Chris. I watched him in our meeting yesterday. And I said to you this morning off air, I go, you know what? That might have been as purposeful and functional and as good as I've ever seen CG. Right? He didn't say a ton, but I felt like he was authentic. So why do you think we can't just rest in the fact that that's what it's about? Because we know it works. So why do we refute it?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we feel like we have to be all these other things to other people? I said it 2 breaks ago when I said, sometimes you just have to be able to say, you know what, is this the best that I can do?
Old forms of society, though, have led you to believe that, right?
We listened to our general manager here yesterday. We were talking about the Miller Lite commercials. Was that not insightful? Shane, I
didn't really watch the commercial.
Shane, are you listening?
Yeah.
But the conversation was insightful that I was walked into.
This is a female talking about other females. This was on the heels of some people taking umbrage with Michigan Lance's delivery and things like that, where sometimes I think just the ability to take self-inventory of where I'm at real time.
Self-awareness.
And it's
just being self-aware.
It's so difficult for us to do, but when we see it, we're like, oh, man, I love it. That's the simple versus easy. Sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because I said this last week, there's this weird thing about where self-awareness and situational awareness can come across as lacking humility. We hate LeBron for it. Oh, rabbit ears, always paying attention to blah, blah, blah. Well, he's self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
He's extremely self-aware. But how does it come across? As lacking humility. But typically it's because the receivers of the information aren't very secure. They aren't, right? So Coach Rule's going to say some things and be like, oh, man, that's what I've always wanted in a leader. That's, oh, yeah, let's go. Oh, wait. Can't drink the Kool-Aid. I'm not going to drink the Kool-Aid because we can't stay in the moment.
But it's all about how you own it, too. If that's the way you want to own it that way.
Yeah, I get the what. I don't get the why. What's like, why does it have to be that way? Because that's how we've always done it?
Maybe people can think like that, but I think it's just about, do you want to buy into the person or do you want to buy into the theme? Like, I would think it's more like, hey, the why is I'm buying into the person, not the narrative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. I had 3 people in the last 7 days ask me for Verzal services. Does Verzal strike you as the type of guy that I would want to be a pallbearer at my funeral?
No, because he's a Cubs fan.
But he is. But do you know why? Because he's intentional.
And he's authentic.
Why is that so hard?
B, sorry we couldn't get to you today. Keep those thoughts.
Dang, we left Brian on hold?
I know. Well, we just kept talking. We
Sorry.
kept going.
Sorry, B. Still my guy.
We're talking golf next. We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I'm confident. I feel good. It's been a great year. It's been an amazing year, and I'm just hoping to keep adding more to it. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully I can keep riding that wave.
That's John Rahm, as we're back on Coffee and Cream to wind this thing down on a Wednesday. Brad Klein joining us here in a few moments. Before we get to him, our due apologies to Brian, who was on hold waiting for us to get to him. If you can hold those thoughts till tomorrow, we appreciate you always listening and being involved on the show. We appreciate you, but we apologize that we couldn't get to you. Also, in regards to Two for You, thank goodness Darcy's a very forgiving person, because I know she'll let us postpone that game. I just like good conversation. Right. I just had to let it go.
The show happened, so we apologize, but we do get one of the more entertaining, funny, smart guys when it comes to golf.
And let's bring him in now. Brad Klein, former PGA Tour caddy, at Bradley S. Klein on Twitter. Brad, good morning. I'm excited to talk to you because DB has talked you up all morning.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you here. I'm like a golf nut like everybody else. That's all.
Hey, no pressure, B. I mean, so listen, this is an interesting week because, right, you and I talked with Shane, our producer. Remember a couple years ago, we talked about the schedule change and what it means for golf and rearranging the order. Does it seem like we should be having this discussion in the middle of May, or have we transitioned?
I think the transition is here. It's by August, it's too hot. Everybody's tired, and we're waiting for football. So it's probably a better schedule this way. Yeah.
Hey, Brad. So I was doing my research last night. Couldn't believe the PGA Championship's already here. I told DB and Shane that yesterday. I'm like, are we really to this point?
Yeah.
And one guy I've been keeping my eye on, especially since the Masters and a little bit before, is Brooks Koepka. And that's because he's known for showing out at the PGA Championship. 6 top 15s, 4 top 5s, 2 victories. He had the impressive showing at the Masters just about a month ago. Is the time here for Brooksy to do it again and assert his dominance in the event?
Well, at least for 54 holes, we'll see if he can get used to a 72-hole tournament. It's been a while. It's good to see him back, actually. He's kind of bionic in terms of the injuries and the workouts. And obviously he was on an amazing streak a couple of years back when he won back-to-back PGAs overlapping with back-to-back U.S. Opens. And it looked like he was going to be a dominant force. But, golf is more than just physical workouts. There's a lot of ingenuity and strategy and mental components to it. And it's hard to keep that up, but given his showing at the Masters, which was, he was the flagship player, so to speak, for the LIV Tour, and that's always going to be an issue now in going into the majors. So it's possible. Dustin Johnson's playing pretty well. Taylor Gooch has won. I think he won back-to-back. So there's going to be some interesting, conversations going on about LIV Tour versus PGA Tour players here. But Brooks Koepka certainly looks like he's in form. Yeah.
All right, Brad. I'm going to ask you about versatility and range because you have both coming off the grid. So I look at stats, and I wouldn't say I'm a huge analytics guy, but it matters. And so I'm always in these pools, and I need to slot my picks. Let me ask you about a guy that's top 5 in bunker avoidance and top 5 in strokes gained from the fairway over his last 24 rounds. One of Oklahoma State's finest. should I be keeping an eye on Wyndham Clark this week and how he's could potentially play in the PGA Championship?
First of all, I want to protest. This is totally unfair. You pull this stuff on me, research and all this. I'm speaking now under protest. So,
permission to treat like a hostile witness, Your Honor.
Yeah. Let me chew the gum and pull a Marissa Tomei on you here. The betting stuff is really interesting to me. On a week-to-week basis, you really never know what's going to happen other than strokes gained. Putting is, that's always a great one. If you think about it with bunkers, the average tour player is in about 3 bunkers, maybe 2-3 bunkers around, maybe 1 fairway bunker around. So I don't know how, what's the word? The data points there are fairly small. So I don't know.
Okay.
I would look at the statistic that I would look for is fairway accuracy. I think that's going to be more important. It's not a long golf course. There are no long golf courses anymore. And they're going to be laying up on a number of holes because of Allen Creek running across the fairway. They'll be laying up on 13 and on 10 and on 12 and on maybe even on 14, the short 4-par. So to me, the most important thing is hitting your approach shot from a fairway. The rough is really tough. It's 4 inches. And I have to say this, the scariest thing about when the PGA moved the championship to May is everybody figured it's going to rule out the northern courses because Rochester, it's close to the Great Lakes.
Right.
It just came out of winter, but it's come out really strong. The rough is really thick. It's a combination of bluegrass, rye, fescue, boy, it's going to be very hard to control shots. So to me, accuracy, I don't think this is a bomb and gouge course like what Bryson DeChambeau did to Wingfoot. I think you're going to have to hit it out of fairway, hit your approach shot out of fairway. So that's the stat I would look at.
So, Brad, it's along those same lines, because you could look at that one of 2 ways. In regards to what part of the game you think will be most vital this week, would you say it's play off the tee or those approach shots that you were talking about?
Well, it's a driving course, so play off the tee, yeah. This is a U.S. Open course, really. And what's interesting is Andrew Green, the architect, who's been on TV quite a bit this week. It's sort of his coming out party as a restoration expert. He's got credit for Scioto and Inverness, Congressional, but Oak Hill is a big, major thing. And most restorations you restore the fairway with. What they did here, in keeping with the history of golf at Oak Hill, is they expanded the fairways where the members land, but where the tour guys land at 310, off the tee, they got narrow and they pinched it in. So the members are going to be playing short of the bunkers, and the landing areas are basically designed for championships. So those fairways landing areas are not more than 24, 25 yards wide, and that's consistent. And so the result is it's going to be driving accuracy that I think is really important. Normally when a PGA Tour event doesn't have this kind of rough, hit it as far as you can. The rule on the tour is get an 8-iron in your hand or less, and you've got a much higher chance of making birdie. That's going to be tougher here.
So last time we were talking about Rory, it was how well he was playing without getting over the hump over the last 9 years, right? This was a while ago. Yeah. But let me ask you this though, Brad, are you concerned? Or is this just kind of you become to accept this on how we flirt with this, but he just doesn't seem to put it all together for 4 rounds in events like this?
Well, I think a lot of people revert to psychology or pressure and all stuff. To me, it's always a matter of swing mechanics. And the problem with Rory McIlroy, he's a great golfer, drives the ball beautifully, but his hip rotation is so fast that it gets him into trouble with shorter shots. He's not a good wedge. He's not a very good wedge player. When he's had slumps, it's the short play because he's making a full swing with hip rotation that's designed for a driver, but he's only hitting it 110, 120 yards, and he can hit it. He hits it long a lot. He hits it a little off the face slightly. So that's the adjustment that I think he struggles with because he's so geared to full bore rotation. So now it's 9 years since he's won. It's unbelievable that he hasn't won a major in 9 years.
Right.
And then, of course, he missed the cut at the Masters. He bowed out of the Heritage. You know, the last time I bowed out of a tournament did not cost me $3 million. But I guess when you got $200 million equipment contracts, $3 million, it's like lunch money for him. So I think the real question is where is he mentally, emotionally, and you know, it's a bit strange. It's a bit strange, I have to say, with him because he's not that normally. You know, he's not a what do you call it? A mental case normally, but this starts to wear
mental midget.
What do you make?
I wouldn't go there. No, it's unusual for him to be in this position. You know, he was very low key this week. The press conference, they tried to get him to goad him into bad mouthing the Live Tour. He didn't do that. He didn't bite. Just, you know, basically said, "I'm geared down here, focusing." So we'll see. But I think it's a big question mark. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what do you make of a guy like Justin Thomas, who there are these talented golfers who have a history of playing well in certain events in certain places, but the numbers may not be adding up, right? Where you rationalize it in your head. What do you make of JT this week?
Probably positive regression.
Well, first of all, don't forget he's won 2 of the last 5 PGAs.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad record.
So that's what I'm talking about, right? Like that's a guy that he's known for. He's a PGA championship guy.
Yeah, you know, it runs in his family. His grandfather played in the PGA at Olympia Fields in 1961, I think it was. I think I covered that for Golf Week.
You Rolodex, stop.
And his father's a PGA pro who still watches him. You know, so he's really into this in a very positive way. It's a very good golf course for him. He drives the ball beautifully. You know, you sort of wonder with his swing. He's so steep and vertical. You kind of wonder how long it's going to last before his back starts, you know, giving him trouble. But he's still young enough where it's not an issue. So his form hasn't been quite as strong as some other players. But obviously, you know, you can't count someone like him out. But obviously, this is really a Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm event. And I'll give you a name in case you weren't going to ask me. I'll give you a name I love is Cameron Young. Cameron Young he's had 3 top 10s in his last 4 majors. Very strong player, very, very impressive. He's in the top. I think he's in the top 10 world ranking right now. I pick Cameron Young here as not a long shot at all, but it's very strong contender.
All right, one of my favorites.
Yeah, so we're talking about strokes gained earlier. At least you alluded to it. Is it now time do I have to look at a Hideki Matsuyama who's been very good over the past 24 rounds?
Bet him day one. Matsuyama day one.
You know, I'd have to look at it. I'm sitting in my car here, so I don't have access to all these, you know, high-tech things like you do.
Listen, a lot of things are high-tech. DB isn't one of them.
Well, he pulled that research nonsense on me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Would you dial up on your modem?
Yes,
exactly.
I do. I still have a landline.
You got 156 players. You got, I think, 25 club pros. You know, I hope some of them make the cut. It would be nice. But it's always the same 20 people you end up talking about every week. And then you just never know. You just, you know, Jordan Spieth could contend. He could. Turns out his wrist is so hurt, so painful, he may not be able to really compete. So it's week to week. It's such a, you know, that's why I focus on the golf course. I have that has a continuity, a solidity to it, reliable. It doesn't change that much, or when it does, you know, it takes 3 years to change. The player stuff is just so not flaky, but vary from week to week. So, you know,
can Jason Day play well a couple of events in a row?
That was something, boy. I was glad to see him win.
Me too.
That's the DB guy right there.
I think we all remember Chambers Bay in 2015 when he nearly passed out with vertigo, and he had a serious issue with that for a while. It's great to see him play. When he won the PGA at Whistling Straits in 2015, he was driving it better than anybody in the world. This is an event where I suspect it's going to come down to Scheffler and Rahm, but it would be great to see all of these young guys play. And we're almost going to go this whole conversation without mentioning Tiger Woods. But such is the state of the game now. You got so many good players in their 20s. So it's an exciting time for golf. It's great. The ratings are up. The guys respect each other. They like each other. And, they have a very competitive spirit to them. So I suspect this is going to be a very interesting tournament. I hope so, certainly.
Brad, you didn't disappoint, man. Thanks so much for your time this morning, and we'll talk again soon.
I hope so. Great. All right. Enjoy, and don't waste too much money on any one player.
Thanks, Brad.
Spread it around. Great advice. Brad Klein, former PGA Tour caddy at Bradley S. Klein on Twitter. That'll do it for us today on the show. For Damon Benning, Shane Schillerberg, I'm Andrew Rogers. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll catch up on a few things, too. We hope you enjoyed today. If you missed anything, go check us out on the podcast. You can watch back on YouTube, or you can go to Apple, you can go to Spotify, and catch us there. It's Coffee and Cream.